Welcome to the second installment of our fall book review. My name is Jennifer Sheridan. I'm the Family Services Coordinator at the Coleman Center, and I'm excited today to talk to you about Chapter 3 of The Whole Brain Child, written by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne-Bryson. This is a fantastic book, and as we're going to see today, we are about to add on even more strategies to help support our kiddos as they develop, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, as they learn to navigate the world around them. So we're going to start off by doing just a very fast review of the first two chapters, which we did in, which you can find in our last video. But the introduction is all about surviving and thriving. And here's the thing, it is really all about turning these survival moments into opportunities that we can enhance the thriving of our children. And we can do this by being more aware of ourselves and helping our children to be more aware of themselves. And then chapter 1 takes us into parenting with the brain in mind. We are learning in chapter 1 all about how integration is so key to success, not just in the home, but also in school and in the social lives of our kiddos. We are looking at what molds our brain, and really that's experience. So check out the story of Marion and Marco. You can find that in chapter 1, and how an accident with his babysitter really kept him from being able to interact with his mom in a healthy way. And so she really guided that in a better way so that he could integrate this experience. He also talks about, Daniel does in chapter 1, the river of well-being, and how we can get either on the side of the bank of chaos or on the bank of rigidity. And so that's something, a visual to keep in mind as we course through the rest of this book and see how this, we are able to integrate this into just the everyday moments that we have with our kids. So let's check out chapter 2. Our brief review of chapter 2 says 2 brains are better than 1, right? So this is how we're going to integrate the left and right brain. So we're about to talk in a minute about how to do this top to bottom, but chapter 2 is all about integrating this right and left brain, this logical left side of our brain versus this emotional, creative right side of our brain, which this right side, we learned, is so much more developed than this logical left brain. And so for those of us who are already into adulthood, we have already developed a strong left brain. We know that it's hard to sometimes to speak the right brain language of our kiddos, but that's exactly what we need to do. Throughout the book, we're going to learn 12 strategies to really inform our parenting. And chapter 2 is where we see the first one. And the first one is connect and redirect. So remember, we're doing that by connecting emotionally and then bringing in the left brain in order to bring in the lessons and discipline that our kiddos need in order to learn better so they can do better. And then our second strategy is name it to tame it. Now, a lot of times our kiddos are stuck in this right brain and their emotions are running high. And so sometimes we need to just name those emotions with our left brain to help draw them out of this intense emotional state. And so that's why the second strategy is name it to tame it. And then just being aware of our own thinking styles can really help facilitate all of these strategies, number 1 through 12. So I think that's something we carry on with this throughout the entire book. So let's just jump right on in to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about integrating the upstairs and the downstairs brain. So our downstairs brain really is like the downstairs of a home. It's like the hub where we get those needs met. Now, if you've been in a 2-story house, or maybe you live in a 2-story house, it's similar in a 1-story house, but this is a great illustration. Usually what we see is the kitchen, right? The living room, usually the laundry room's on the first floor. In a traditional home, maybe if we built our home, we have a laundry upstairs if our bedrooms are upstairs. But you find all of these like centers of the family unit located downstairs because that's where we're getting these needs met. It's where people enter in. It's where we're assessing, where we're really just interacting with a lot of people, getting the things that we need, especially as children, getting those needs met. So in our brain, the brain stem and the limbic region is located really below our nose. So if we drew like a little line right here and went down, excuse me, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the downstairs brain. This brain stem and the limbic system, that includes our amygdala. We'll get to the amygdala in just a second, but this is what we're talking about when we're talking about downstairs brains. This helps us breathing, which I see is hypo on my slide. And so my the left side of my brain is like, oh no, you messed up. And then, or the right side of my brain is saying, oh no, you messed up. And the left side is saying, oh, everybody can understand you make mistakes. So breathing, blinking, feeling this fight or flight response, strong emotions like anger and fear, all of these are located in this downstairs brain. And so we need to be able to not get rid of this because we need to be able to do all of these functions like breathe. I mean, I definitely don't want my kiddo to stop breathing, right? So we need to have access to this downstairs brain. But what we're doing in this chapter is learning about how to build this staircase in order to get to the upstairs brain. Now, the upstairs brain is, it includes our cerebral cortex. It includes this middle prefrontal cortex. All of these things located in this general area of our brain. These are the things that help us to make wise decisions. Our downstairs brains, they can be some wise decision making if we're in danger, actual danger. We're walking in the woods and we see a rattlesnake. And the first thing I'm gonna do is run away. And I will think later about how I don't even like to run. That's okay. I want that downstairs brain to take over my body and get me out of that danger. But what the upstairs brain does is to say, you know, I probably don't have a rattlesnake in my house. I can think a little more calmly and say, I bet that's my son's fake rattlesnake that he likes to hide around the house. And so it helps me to think through and problem solve. It also helps me to do a lot of imagining and accessing these creative parts of my brain to create things, and also helps me to plan. And if you're a planner, then you are utilizing that upstairs brain. You're not living in your downstairs brain, because when we're living downstairs, we're not able to plan and make a way out. And so that's one good thing that we want our kiddos to be able to do, is to plan ahead, right? You have a project due on Thursday and it's Monday. We want you to make a plan in order to get that project done and not wait till the last minute, right? Isn't that what we really want? So on page 40 of your book, you can see the small list. Now I have lots of highlights on my book because that's what I like to do when I read. But he gives a short, just a short little list of things I feel like all of the parents I know, at least, and myself included, these are a little list of things that we would want our kids to be able to engage with. Sound decision making and planning, control over our emotions and our body, self-understanding, empathy, morality. I mean, these are things that across cultures we could find parents wanting from their kids. Now, what that may look like, you know, especially in the terms of maybe morality and control over our own body, maybe those might differ from one family to the next or one culture to the next. But I would say for the most part, it's a really encompassing list of things that we want our kiddos to be able to do. They absolutely cannot do this. They cannot do these things without integrating the upstairs and the downstairs brain. If they don't do this, if they do not get this type of integration, they cannot meet these expectations. And I would say they're not even going to meet these expectations, even if they have really great integration, because we know that this prefrontal cortex is not developed until around, oh, I hate to say it, age 24, age 25. And so what happens is that we see parents make an expectation. We see a child that has some good integration, right? So they're integrating this upstairs and this downstairs brain, and they're able to meet that expectation. But fast forward 2 weeks, mom and dad place that same expectation, and what happens? It just all falls apart. And the child is not able to integrate these two aspects of their brains, two parts of their brains. And then they live in this downstairs brain. There's a massive tantrum. There is kicking, there's screaming, there's intense fear maybe about something that's going on. And so then we're left, if you're like me, you're left saying, but wait, they just did this 2 weeks ago, right? This is because integrating the upstairs and downstairs brain is a practice, something that we need to develop over time. And our kiddos, because this upstairs brain is like a building built that the roof is off. The downstairs looks great. We've put the tile in. We've got all the appliances in the kitchen. But then we walk up the steps and there's like no roof and there's no sheetrock on the walls. And it's just the frame of an upstairs. And you're thinking, but downstairs looks so good. And downstairs looks like we're ready. And then we go up the steps and then we can see we're not ready. And this is where most of our kiddos are, especially if we are seeing behavior issues, we are seeing even just the normal stresses of childhood causing our kiddos to act in a way that's not appropriate. So what we're going to do is we are going to understand that there are limits to this integration, and that includes development, and then my favorite part of the brain to talk about, the amygdala. Now, I believe we talked about, now I can't remember even which video we talked about this in, but I think it was the brain and body connection video. I remember we talked about the amygdala, like these little almond-shaped pieces of our brain. Now, these are located in the limbic region in this bottom downstairs part of our brain. The amygdala is all about fight or flight. It's what's getting me out of the woods when I see a bear. When I was hiking in the woods, hiking in the mountains a couple years ago, we saw some little baby bears. Well, guess what? When there's some baby bears around, there's going to be a mama bear around. And so I started, okay, guys, we got to go. We got to get down. We got to get off this mountain. We got to get off this trail because I don't know where the mama bear is, right? So my downstairs brain started saying like, alert, alert, alert. My amygdala started kind of taking over. My heart rate started to increase. I started to feel a little nervous. I started looking around a lot more. I was much more aware of my surroundings. This is what happens when the amygdala starts to take over. Now, because I have good brain integration, my upstairs, my downstairs, they're pretty integrated, thankfully. I was able to say, okay, I'm not in danger right now, so we don't need to run down the mountain. But what I do need to do is to get all of my people off the trail as soon as possible. So we're just going to quickly walk past. There's no need for us to linger near the baby bears. And so because I've had that integration, I was able to calm myself. I was able to tell my amygdala without really saying any words to it. I was able to tell my amygdala, hey, you need to calm down because I have this under control. I'm making a plan now. And so no need to fight or flight. I don't need to fight the baby bears, and I don't need to run away at this stage. So I can calm that down and say, I'm in a safe place. And so what happens is when our kiddos don't have good brain integration, that amygdala takes over. And because it's the watchdog, because it's out there looking for a threat, always on guard, always looking, what happens is it springs to action and it hijacks our brain and it takes over. Now, our upstairs brain is all about thinking and then acting. So I'm making my plan, imagining what I'm going to do, how I'm going to create this masterpiece, and then I do the thing. But my downstairs brain, and when my amygdala takes over, it acts before it thinks, which is so fascinating because I would guess if you're like me, if you had been asked this question yesterday, a couple years ago, whenever you started learning about the brain, if you had been asked this question, you would have said, oh no, we always think before we act, right? We always do. Like, we have to think first, right, before we act. And actually, when we're in our upstairs brain, sure, that's exactly what we do. I think about, okay, what am I going to eat for lunch? And maybe I'm doing that at 7:30 in the morning before I come to work, and I pack my lunch, and I'm making this plan for how this is going to go down. But what happens is when our amygdala takes over, it uses chemicals within our body to make our bodies move in order to preserve our lives. Now, the problem with this is we're not in the baby bear situation most of the time. We are not in a rattlesnake situation most of the time. And so we don't need to enter into that level of fear because we're not actually in an unsafe position, right? Most of our kiddos, when we're in this position, we look at them and we say, you're safe right where you are. I don't understand what's happening here. Like, we were having a great time. But what happens is trauma, our past experiences, can trigger something. Something happens, it seems innocuous, and then we're fine, we're regulated, but one of our kiddos becomes tantruming. They seem to freak out, they start screaming, they start crying uncontrollably, seemingly out of nowhere. What happens is we're either, if we're in this state, usually it's because our amygdala is taking over. We have started feeling some kind of fear. And so we're trying in our best and worst way, all wrapped up together, to get our needs met. And sometimes that is for nurturing, sometimes that is for comfort, and other times it is for intentional control of everyone else. So I want to talk about two different tantrums that you guys might see in your house. Now, the first tantrum is the upstairs tantrum. Now, this is the one, this is, I think, the easier one for kiddos to come out of because they remain in control. But man, actually, it's the one I hate the most. Because what we do with this tantrum is, as kiddos, we learn to manipulate people with this type of tantrum. Now, this tantrum means that I'm going to continue to think with my upstairs brain. I'm going to continue to think, okay, what do I need to do in order to control and manipulate this situation? Now, it may be to try to get a need met. Maybe it is. But for the most part, this is controlling and manipulating to get something that I want. So maybe my need is to not be disappointed. Maybe that's the need that we're trying to avoid. And so I throw a tantrum because I don't get the cookie. And that's fine. We can throw a tantrum. But what happens is, moms and dads, we need not negotiate with the terrorist. So when our child slips into this, and usually you can tell a difference. Most parents I talk to, when they talk about a tantrum, they start describing things, and then they're able to easily extrapolate which tantrum is this, and upstairs or downstairs. Now, we might not use those terms, but they'll easily start describing the differences between the two. Or you may say something like, he just wanted that toy, and he may legit have just wanted that toy. And so upstairs tantrums, they often will stop pretty immediately. And we need to maintain clear boundaries and then have some really clear communication about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. Usually we'll see our kiddos come out of this pretty quickly. So they tantrum. They're like, I want your phone, I want your phone. And you're like, no, you're not getting my phone. They throw a tantrum. And then you're like, because you're tired. You're like me, you're just tired as a parent. And you just give them the phone and you're just like, here, have the phone. And they go, ah! And they stop and it's done. And you're like, dang it, I was manipulated by a terrorist here. And that's exactly what happened. So we want to keep firm boundaries in a situation like this. Now, if we don't have a good sense of our child, of differentiating between these, I would say you need to err on the side of calling it a downstairs tantrum and doing more nurturing and comforting. But if you can differentiate between the two tantrums, I would say when it's an upstairs tantrum, just like Daniel Siegel instructs us, keep those firm boundaries and clear communication about this is not appropriate. Once I say no, I mean no. And maybe I might distract. Maybe I might give some other choices. Maybe it's, can I have a cookie? And I say, you know, not today, because I know I have plans for that other cookie for a lunchbox the next day. And then it's a tantrum and I'm mad and I'm stomping around and I'm swiping something off the kitchen counter. And so the best thing I can do is maintain those boundaries and say, I've said no, so it's going to be a no for today. Doesn't mean you can never get a cookie again. And then maybe I'll redirect, do, number one, which is connect and redirect. Might do a little bit of that first strategy that Siegel and Bryson talked about. So let's talk about a downstairs tantrum, because these tantrums, I would say in my experience, last longer oftentimes, and they look differently. They just look differently. Oftentimes our kiddos might disassociate. They might not even remember having a downstairs tantrum because it becomes, the fear and anger becomes so overwhelming. They go to a place in their brain where they are unable to access that and remember that because it seems so traumatic. So here, the downstairs tantrum, it is really all about our brains being hijacked by the amygdala. And then what we need to do as parents and caregivers is nurture and comfort. Or like strategy one says, connect and redirect. And so we do this through loving touch. We do this through regulating our own emotions, having a calm tone in our voice, being firm with what we're trying to communicate, but not in an angry way, not in an excited way. We're here to help regulate, be co-regulators with our child and help calm that amygdala down. So then, once we have recovered, and this may be the next day, it may not be right then, it may not be right after, but then we can cover, hey, what was going on? What was that inappropriate behavior? And talk about then, what are the consequences to that? Oftentimes, we might have some natural consequences that come about when we get our kiddos start to downstairs tantrum and they break things. And so they have to learn a natural consequences. We don't just go to the store. Maybe in your family, if your family is like mine, we don't just go to the store and replace that thing. Like, that is sad and it makes me sad. You no longer have that toy, but we don't just replace that toy, because that's a natural consequence. Because, right, you and I don't just get to replace something all the time, do we? No, we don't. And so that's what we're trying to teach our kiddos when we are helping them to understand about these natural consequences. Now, it's not you had a tantrum and now I'm going to send you out. I'm gonna further punish you. Having a downstairs tantrum is punishment enough. It is just awful, isn't it? It's hard on our bodies. It's hard on our spirits. But I would say there are some natural consequences. Maybe it's that you tantrumed and now everything in our schedule is pushed back. And so we can no longer go to the birthday party at the end of the day. Or maybe you have shown me your body is not in control. And in order to be more in control of your body, we have to skip that swim party because it's going to make you even more tired than you already are. And so we need to get to bed early in order for your body to get to the rest that it needs. And so when we think about disciplining and consequences and punishment, let's start thinking about that. Let's not throw that out there. Let's engage versus enrage, as we're about to talk about. Let's think through those things before we start throwing things out as parents, because I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes when I get in the heat of the moment, that's what I want to yell, right? Because that's what I think, this is going to get them. This is going to get them to turn around. And you and I both know that is so difficult for a kiddo to turn around when they're stuck in that downstairs brain. So here's 3 strategies, number 3, number 4, and number 5 of our 12 that we can do in order to help integrate this upstairs and this downstairs brain. So number 3 is engage, don't enrage, just like I said. Now on page 51, there's a really great little cartoon that kind of illustrates this, and the mom's in the car. And instead of engaging the negative talk she's getting from her daughter, in the first one, She tries to shut it down. She says, I don't want you to ever say that again. Well, guess what? As soon as we say crazy stuff like that as parents, our kiddos are going to say it again, right? Because what they're trying to do is try to get this reaction out of us. But in the engage section, the mom turns into this back and forth dance between her and the child, naming what's going on, naming those emotions that she sees coming out of her child. That to me is where our children start to feel heard and really start to understand that we're here for them, not just against them. So check that out on page 51. Now, number 4 is use it or lose it. So we've got to exercise this upstairs brain. Now, the reason why our brains are so integrated is because we have had lots of practice, right? I can't tell you how many decisions I have made this far in my life. Endless. And even if I just had to count the decisions made for what people were going to eat for supper, I would already have an integrated brain just on that. But allowing our kiddos to make decisions about themselves when it's a safe option, this helps us to practice integration. Now, if your kiddo is I don't know. I would say this is an excellent starting place to help teach brain integration. So you could give 2 choices. Now, I have another video all about control choices. And sometimes that's used as a way to kind of get us out of this downstairs brain and get us into an upstairs brain mode, because choices require this upstairs brain. It requires a prefrontal cortex thinking in order to make the choice. So sometimes just that will help our kiddos get out of this kind of on the precipice of a tantrum. And so providing choices, or saying, well, we have 2 birthday parties. Which one do you want to go to? And allowing them to make that choice for themselves. Now, my kids are in getting close to middle school. And so we have a lot more of this than when they were 5 and 6, because they are able to think through more deeply what is going on. So even things like, what are you going to wear? How do you want to style your hair? Which color socks do you want? I mean, you can break this down in all sorts of things in order to empower your child to learn how to do this. Another one is breathing exercises. You can find all sorts of information online. We have one on our YouTube page as well. This is a great opportunity to teach this because it will help to calm that amygdala when we are starting to feel upset. And then we want to teach our kiddos to pay attention to themselves, to their feelings, to their body. This is a great way to integrate what's going on down here so we can get back up to the top story. And then our 5th strategy is move it or lose it. Sometimes some of our kiddos need a lot of proprioceptive input in order to help regulate their bodies and emotions. It's why we do recess, guys. It's why kids love to play outside. It's why, we want to jump on the bed instead of just laying on the bed. It's why we want to build forts and pick up big books and put those books on top of the sheets in order to build these forts. And we're dragging chairs through the living room in order to make this happen. Our kids feel so much more calm the more they use their body. And so before our kiddos get hijacked by their amygdala, or even after their amygdala hijacks them, we can get them into the space to say, can we go take a walk? Can we ride bikes together? And you can tell me what's going on. All of this will help our child to be able to regulate when they feel like they've really lost touch with this upstairs brain. So what happens when we as parents get hijacked by our amygdala? Well, we want to first do no harm. Remove yourself. If you are in that space and you are losing it or have lost it, and you feel like you are at that point where you could do some harm, then remove yourself, calm, and regroup. Tell your child, Mom needs to go calm down for a minute. Dad needs to go and take a few deep breaths. I'll be right back, okay? You go calm, and then we're going to come back immediately and repair and reconnect with our child. This can be so difficult because what we're so great at is holding on to that aggression, holding on to those guilty feelings, holding on to that anger even against our child. So we want to be able to remove ourselves enough so we can calm, use our prefrontal cortex, that ours is fully developed if you're over the age of 25, ideally, and be able to help our kiddos regulate so that we can repair and reconnect with them and bring them into a better brain space. Now, we have 5 strategies that we can start using today. Next time, next week, we are going to go over chapter 4, which is killing the butterflies. Oh no, we're going to integrate memory for growth and healing. And so please join us next week. And if you have any questions, you can give us a call at the Coleman Center at 601-584-4704, or you can email me at jennifer.sheridan@petalschools.com. And I look forward to sharing with you guys next week about chapter 4. Thanks so much and have a great day.